Welcome back to the Deep Dive, and a very special welcome to you, our listener.
Yes, so glad to have you with us today.
Whether you are prepping for some highly demanding project at work, maybe you're out for a long run, or you're just harboring this intense curiosity about how massive, sprawling, fictional universes actually hold themselves together.
We are thrilled you're joining us.
Exactly, because today's Deep Dive is, it's an absolute mammoth of an undertaking. We are looking at a source document that is essentially this incredibly detailed encyclopedic breakdown of the characters from Eiichiro Oda's legendary manga series, One Piece.
And honestly, calling it massive almost feels like we aren't doing the scale justice.
Mhm.
I mean, we are talking about a documented cast of thousands.
Right.
We have pirates, naval admirals, revolutionaries, cyborgs, giants, anthropomorphic animals, and literal political deities.
It's staggering.
The sheer volume of characters crossing over dozens of distinct factions is, it's staggering. It is the kind of source material that, at first glance, could easily induce a serious case of information overload.
Oh, for sure. And look, we know you don't have time to feel overwhelmed by an encyclopedia of fictional pirates. So the mission of this deep dive today is to extract the underlying architecture of this universe.
Right, to find the method to the madness.
Exactly. We want to answer a really fundamental creative and structural question. How does a creator manage a cast of thousands without the entire narrative just collapsing under its own weight?
Because so easily could.
It really could. But we're going to find the structural blueprints hiding beneath the chaos. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the core of the story, the main protagonists, the Straw Hat Pirates.
So, we all know Monkey D. Luffy is the emotional anchor of the series, but what this source document really highlights is how uniquely Oda constructs his crew.
Yeah.
The architectural design of the Straw Hats is completely antithetical to a standard military or corporate structure.
Totally. Just looking at the bizarre diversity of this crew from a purely structural standpoint is fascinating. On the surface, I mean, it just feels like a random assortment of weirdos.
It really does.
You have Frankie, right, a shipwright who survived a collision with a sea train by essentially rebuilding his own body with scrap metal, turning himself into a cola-powered cyborg.
Naturally.
And then you have Brooke, a musician who is a living, talking skeleton with an afro because, get this, his soul took 50 years to find his body after he ate the revive fruit.
Yeah, but those visual extremes, they serve a very specific narrative purpose. Oda is heavily leaning into the concept of the castaway.
Oh, interesting.
Take Tony Chopper, for example. The text details his backstory as an anthropomorphic reindeer who ate the human fruit.
Right, the doctor.
Exactly. He was violently rejected by his own reindeer herd because of his blue nose and his new human-like intelligence. And then he was hunted by humans who mistook him for a monster.
That's incredibly bleak.
It is. He was entirely isolated until he was taken in by a quack doctor named Dr. Hiroluk and later mentored by Dr. Kuriha.
Which establishes a foundational structural pillar for the entire series. Blood doesn't make family.
Yes. That is the load-bearing emotional theme of the story. Traditional fantasy often relies heavily on lineage, royal bloodlines, inherited destiny.
The chosen one trope.
Exactly. While One Piece has elements of inherited will, the immediate crew is a collection of outcasts, orphans, and misfits who actively choose each other. That found family dynamic allows the creator to pull characters from wildly different backgrounds, geographies, and species.
And it ensures the world feels vast while keeping the core cast emotionally tethered.
Spot on. They will declare war on an entire global superpower just to save one of their own, like Nico Robin. They operate completely outside the established rules of the world because their only real allegiance is to each other.
But as the story grows, so does their influence, which brings us to the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. The scale of this really stood out in the text.
Massive.
Over 5,600 pirates across 7 different crews. Groups like the Bardo Club and the Beautiful Pirates, and they all swear allegiance to Captain Luffy.
This is where we see the author actively defying traditional hierarchical structures. A fleet of that size, in almost any other story or real-world historical context, demands a strict militaristic chain of command.
You'd need captains, lieutenants, logistics officers.
And rigid orders. But the text highlights a fascinating structural choice. Luffy vehemently objects to being a fleet commander.
But wait, how does a fleet of nearly 6,000 heavily armed pirates actually function if the supposed leader refuses to give orders? Doesn't that just invite total operational chaos?
It invites autonomy. which in this specific universe breeds a much stronger form of loyalty. Luffy outright rejects the traditional parent-child cup ceremony that usually binds pirate fleets together.
He doesn't want the title.
He doesn't. He organizes this massive new army in a way that allows them to act completely independently. They are not his subordinates, they are his peers.
Wow.
The only unspoken rule is that if one crew is in trouble, the others must do what they can to help, and vice versa.
So it's an alliance based entirely on mutual freedom, not top-down control.
Yes. And to connect this back to you, our listener, there is a profound lesson in leadership hidden in that dynamic.
Definitely.
True leadership, the kind that inspires a fierce, unwavering loyalty where thousands of people will drop everything to fight for your cause, often comes from mutual respect and granting autonomy.
It doesn't come from forced, rigid hierarchies or endless micromanagement.
Exactly. The story argues that you build a stronger organization by empowering people to be free rather than forcing them to fall in line.
That is a phenomenal takeaway. But of course, a story with thousands of characters needs friction. Luffy's fleet thrives on freedom, but freedom is exactly what the established powers fear most.
Naturally.
And that fear brings us to the Disruptors, the group the text categorizes as the worst generation, originally known as the 11 Supernovas.
These are the rookie pirates who all converged on the Sabaody archipelago at the exact same time, each carrying a massive bounty. The authorities basically consider them the ultimate problem children of the seas.
And their abilities are brilliantly weird. The source document breaks down their powers, and they are so much more complex than just, shooting fire or having super strength.
Oh, far more complex.
You have Capone Gang, Booj, who operates like a mafia don. He ate the castle fruit, which means he maintains a dimensional fortress literally inside his own body.
It's wild.
He can shrink his crew down, hide them inside his chest, and then they fire cannons out of his bodily ports.
Yeah.
Then there's Jewelry Bonnie, who looks like a young woman, but uses the H fruit to alter her own timeline or turn her enemies into helpless infants or frail old men.
Terrifying in its own way.
And Trafalgar Law, the Surgeon of Death, who uses the Op fruit to create spherical spatial areas where he can slice people into pieces without killing them, or instantly swap their bodies around.
What's fascinating here is the narrative function of this specific group. If you are an author managing a massive world, why introduce 11 highly complex, incredibly powerful rivals all at the exact same time?
It seems like a recipe for narrative bloat.
It does. But structurally, they represent the total disruption of the status quo.
The world government dubs them the worst generation precisely because they refuse to play the game the way it has been played for decades.
Right. The world prior to their arrival has been locked in a very careful, stagnant stalemate, controlled by an old guard of pirates and politicians who are comfortable in their positions of power.
They like things the way they are.
Exactly. The worst generation comes in with these bizarre, unpredictable abilities, and they completely upend the board. If you look at Capone Bij's fortress body, it physically represents the impenetrable, defensive, and treacherous nature of the criminal underworld he embodies.
That makes perfect sense.
These rookies are willing to assassinate the old guard, form shifting and untrustworthy alliances, and create absolute chaos. In the architecture of this story, the worst generation acts as the engine driving the plot forward into unpredictable territory. They prevent the world from feeling static.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We've talked about the rookies causing chaos, but we need to look at the scale of the old guard they are challenging. The geopolitics of power in this universe is insanely detailed.
Oh, it's a massive web.
Broadly speaking, we are looking at the titans of the sea, the 4 emperors and the 7 warlords of the sea. And the scale here is just absurd. We aren't talking about typical pirate captains. We're talking about walking forces of nature ruling entire empires. The source text details their domains, and it reads more like mythology than maritime history.
Take Big Mom, or Charlotte Linlin. The text breaks down her empire of Totoland. She's a 28-foot-tall ruler with 85 children.
Just massive.
But structurally, what's vital is her power. The soul fruit. She literally rips fragments of souls from her subjects to bring inanimate objects to life, building an entire ecosystem out of taxation by lifespan.
Taxation by lifespan. What a concept.
She wears a pirate hat named Napoleon that is alive and talks to her. She rides a thundercloud named Zeus and a miniature sun named Prometheus.
She is an entire military-industrial complex contained within one person.
Exactly.
And Kaido is just as terrifying, the king of the beasts. This guy is a behemoth who consumed a mythical zone devil fruit, one of those incredibly rare animal transformation fruit that allows him to turn into a massive azure dragon.
A literal dragon.
Yeah. And he has a hobby of trying to commit suicide, but he's so indestructible that he always survives without a scratch. He commands an army of animal hybrids. But then, right alongside these physical gods, the text places someone like Buggy the Clown.
Buggy is the perfect structural foil to the emperors. He has a big red clown nose, fights with knives, and ate the chop fruit.
Right.
Which makes him immune to slashing attacks because his body just separates into floating pieces.
He started as a minor, almost comical villain in the East Blue, but through a series of massive misunderstandings, optical illusions, and sheer dumb luck, he continually fails upwards.
It's hilarious, but also brilliant.
The world government accidentally credits him with a mass prison breakout, and suddenly the global public thinks he's a criminal mastermind. Now he sits recognized as an emperor and the figurehead of an organization called Cross Guild, while vastly more powerful characters like Crocodile and Dracula Myhawk are actually running the operations behind the scenes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Oda has constructed a highly delicate geopolitical balance that mirrors real-world international relations. It's not just random strong guys fighting in a vacuum.
Not at all.
You have the four emperors who act as sovereign nations ruling their own territories in the New World. Then you have the world government and their navy acting as the global policing force trying to maintain order. And caught in the middle are the Seven Warlords of the sea.
The warlords are essentially government-sanctioned privateers, right? Powerful pirates hired to hunt other pirates because the sea is just too vast for the navy to police entirely on its own.
Yes. A brilliant commentary on state-sanctioned violence. It creates a precarious, three-way stalemate. And the genius of the world building is showing what happens when that balance fractures.
Right, the power vacuum.
The text details the fall of the Emperor Whitebeard, Edward Newgate, a man with the power to create literal tsunamis and earthquakes. His bounty was over 5 billion. When the Nazi publicly executes one of his commanders, Porcus D. Ace, Whitebeard brings his entire fleet to war.
And his eventual death isn't just a sad moment for the characters. It's the Archduke Ferdinand moment of this universe.
Precisely. It creates a massive global power vacuum. Territories previously protected by his name are suddenly vulnerable. New upstart pirates rush in to claim his spot, and the world government has to scramble to maintain control over the resulting chaos.
The ripple effects are huge.
The architecture of the world relies entirely on this tension. Later, when the member nations of the world vote to abolish the warlord sister entirely during their global council, the reverie, the geopolitical landscape, fractures again. This is why the story can span decades without losing momentum. The political consequences of every major battle are vast, systemic, and world-altering.
You think you're just reading about a rubber guy fighting a dragon, but you're actually getting a masterclass in international relations, proxy wars, and power vacuums.
You really are.
But dealing with all this power, there's a much darker side to it detailed in the text. I want to transition to the strange mechanics of artificial power in this world, specifically the smile devil fruits used by Kaido's Animal Kingdom pirates in the nation of Wano.
This is arguably one of the most tragic and structurally profound elements detailed in the entire source document.
It starts off seeming almost comical, playing into the bizarre visual humor we expect from the series. Kaido employs a rogue scientist to manufacture artificial devil fruits called smiles, aiming to build an unstoppable army of animal-human hybrids. But the manufacturing process is incredibly flawed. Only a small percentage of the soldiers who eat them actually gain powers. Those lucky ones are called the gifters. And the visual results are utterly absurd body horror played for laughs. We are talking about a guy with bat wings instead of ears, or a man whose stomach is literally the head of a lion, or a soldier who just has a fully formed pink-furred gorilla growing out of his waist.
The visual dissonance is striking, but the text quickly pivots to the people who aren't lucky, the pleasures.
The mid-level foot soldiers of Kaido's army. They are the ones who took the gamble, ate an artificial smile fruit to gain power, but it turned out to be a defective dud. They gain no animal powers whatsoever.
But they suffer a horrifying side effect. The deceptive chemicals in the fruit strip them entirely of their emotional range. The pleasures lose the physical ability to express any negative emotions. As a permanent side effect, they can only feel and express joy.
It's deeply unsettling. They are forced to smile and laugh perpetually, even when they are in excruciating physical pain, even when they are watching their comrades die, or when they are actively grieving.
They are trapped in their own bodies, physically incapable of expressing their true misery. And structurally, this serves a chilling narrative purpose. Kaido isn't just building an army, he is occupying the nation of Wano, subjecting its citizens to starvation, slavery, and ecological ruin.
Yeah, it's brutal.
By unleashing these defective fruits, he creates a scenario where the systemic oppression and abject poverty of Wano are masked by literal chemically induced laughter.
Wow.
The tyrant wants a smiling army and a smiling populace because it completely demoralizes any sense of rebellion. It is the psychological horror of bodily and emotional autonomy being stolen for the sake of mass-producing military power.
It completely shifts the tone of the entire narrative arc. What starts as a funny visual gag about a guy with a chicken on his rear end turns into this profound nightmare about manufactured happiness masking systemic cruelty. So, what does this all mean? How do we wrap our heads around a source text that bounces wildly from a rubber pirate and a cyborg shipwright to deeply complex geopolitical warfare and the psychological horror of forced laughter?
It means we must look past the chaotic surface. If we synthesize everything we've discussed today, it becomes clear that the massive character list of One Piece isn't just a bloated roster of cool designs. It is a meticulously organized, deeply interconnected ecosystem.
Everything has its place.
Every bizarre character, from a talking skeleton to a mafia castleman, serves a highly specific structural purpose. They represent the emotional anchor of found family, the narrative engine of political disruption, the delicate tension of global power balances, or the horrific human cost of artificial ambition.
The blueprint is always there, even when the world feels like it's spinning out of control.
And the key takeaway for you, our listener, is about how to process complex information in your own life. When you are faced with an overwhelming amount of data, whether it's navigating a massive corporate restructuring, analyzing a complex new industry, or just trying to understand the shifting dynamics of a large organization, don't let the sheer volume of faces and facts paralyze you.
Look for the underlying categorizations.
Exactly. Look for the factions, the unspoken rules of engagement, the alliances, and the power vacuums. Once you find the structural architecture, the load-bearing pillars holding the information together, even the most chaotic and dense data becomes entirely digestible and meaningful.
Find the structure and the noise becomes a symphony. That is a fantastic way to approach complex environments.
Yeah, before we go, this deep dive raises an important question, building directly upon the tragedy of the smile fruits and the pleasures we just discussed.
Let's hear it.
Consider those soldiers and citizens who are chemically and systemically forced to laugh through their own misery, just to serve an artificial power structure, masking the true ruin around them. In our own modern era of highly curated realities, of toxic positivity in the workplace where you are expected to always be a team player, and social media feeds demanding constant performative happiness.
Yeah, that performative joy.
How much of our own emotional expression is dictated by the systems we are trapped in? What does true emotional freedom actually look like for you today?
Wow. That is a heavy, profoundly necessary thought to carry with you into your week. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope we helped you navigate the incredible, overwhelming architecture of this sprawling fictional world, and maybe gave you a new lens through which to view the massive amounts of information and the systemic structures in your own life. Keep questioning the blueprints, keep exploring, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.